Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. So today we're going to be tackling another tier list, and this time we've got the Age of Empires 4 maps to choose from and make a quick little tier list out of them. So as you can see, I've got my criteria over here. Starting from perfectly balanced to acceptable, could use balancing, Alta 4, which means you don't want to play that game no matter what, and then D tier, which is just absolutely horrendous and even worse than some of the maps that you usually dodge. Now there are 17 maps to choose from, and these are the maps that are available in the quick match queue. I'm making this video as objectively as possible, so I'm going to reserve my opinion as much as I possibly can, and I'm going to judge the map based on what it's supposed to do. That being said, objectively, water gameplay is worse than land gameplay by far, so I'm going to be rating water maps quite low right off the bat, just because the gameplay is simply not as interesting, both from a viewer perspective and a player perspective. Let's hop into it with Lipany number 1. That is going to be in a perfectly balanced category. Now we're starting off strong. Lipany is a very, very nice land map. It has a mixture of cliffs, of hidden stealth forests, of open land aggression map, and it's really just a good, well-balanced map that really allows for a lot of different civs to work and have a good game pretty much. So Lipany, in my opinion, is the perfect example of something that is well-balanced, fair every time, and exciting every time. And it also plays out quite differently depending on the civs and strategies used, so it's very good. Next up is Hillendale. Hillendale is one of those maps that it does what a closed map does pretty much perfectly. You start on a nice little like enclosed Acropolis type area, and then you have to fight for the center because there's 3 sacred sites, 5 relics, and a ton of gold and stone, as well as some decent woodlands in the middle of the map, which encourages people to go out of their little Acropolis and actually fight in the mid and late game. So it really encourages people to expand this, like, despite it being a little bit more of a closed and more boomy map. In my opinion, Hillendale is one of the best at one of the best maps at what it does, easily going to the perfectly balanced tier as well. And you might be thinking we're starting off strong, guys, but we got some bad maps coming, and I'm going to let you guys know. King of the Hill is the next one. Now, King of the Hill, I've got some issues with it. The map spawn, it can be a little bit unfair. Like, sometimes you have big wood close by, and sometimes you have only the small wood close by, and that feels a little bit unfair. I'm also not a huge fan of the one sacred site in the middle, kind of campy style that the map kind of plays out to be. So in my opinion, it's just not the most exciting map to play over a ton of games. That being said, what it does aim to do, which is get one person in the hill and then controlling the hill usually wins you the game, it does very well. So I'm going to put it as an acceptable map. It's really good. It's refreshing to play from time to time, but if you had to play this like, let's say 10 times a day, you'd probably get very bored of it. Whereas Lipany, I feel like I can personally play it 10 times a day. I can watch it 10 times a day, and I'd still find those games enjoyable. Mongol Heights. So this is a map with one narrow river, throughout the middle of the map. There's also a ton of sheep on this map, which I do quite like. I think it rewards good exploration and good scouting as well, to find all those sheep despite having like a lot of water on the map, a lot of fish to take. I think Mongolian Heights is probably, like, because water gameplay is kind of annoying right now, even if it's just a little bit of water, it kind of completely changes how the meta is played on those maps. I'm going to put it in the acceptable tier list. Yeah, I'll put it in the acceptable area. I think it's like decent for what it tries to do, which is just like have some water fights plus some land aggression. But I don't think it's very fun to play because of how stale water tends to get. However, the odd game on Mongolian Heights is pretty good, and objectively speaking, it does do what it sets out to do. So that's pretty good. Altai. This map is immediately going right into could use balancing. Like, this is the perfect definition of a mid-tier map. It's like really good at like some generations at what it tries to do, which is like, I'm saying like a lot. Wow. Okay. It's really good at having a semi-open, semi-closed land map. I get what it's trying to do, but a lot of generations end up being way too closed, and some guy gets way too much of a defensive map, and other generations are a little bit more well balanced. So I think that if they just balance out the map to remove some of the cliffs on the side, just to allow for a little bit more of an open area consistently, I feel like I can enjoy Altai a little bit more. I feel like it'll be a better map. Also, maybe making the cliffs a little bit skinnier could be good, because right now there's just not a lot of map to go around. It feels like there's not a lot of space, especially in the mid game where you're looking for woodlines. Past your initial like 2 woodlines that you get, there's like no wood on this map. So I think like the map is just not that enjoyable to play in some cases. In other cases, it's fine. It's perfect in the mid tier for me. Next up is Ancient Spires. I actually think this map is horrible. I would even put it below Alta 4 tier. I really just think that the map needs a complete rework. It's super unbalanced. Like, it's so bad. And I'll tell you why. Ancient Spires is a map that, like, the randomness on it makes it super unfair to decide, like, from the very get-go. Like, depending on if you have close water, far water, good water, bad water, it changes completely what you decide to go for and the strategy you go for. On top of that, Mongols is just completely insane on this map, and it's like not even fun to play anything but Mongols. Delhi can sometimes compete, but that's about it. And usually they just get steamrolled as well. So for me, this map is something that's just like not fun to play, very RNG, and needs a complete rework in my opinion. At least to make it a little bit more balanced. I'm not even sure how. I just think that something needs to change to make it a little bit more consistent for me. Archipelago. This map is going to the Alta 4 tier. I will never play Archipelago because it's a water map with no crossing to my opponent, and that is simply the most boring type of gameplay. Now, I know this is an opinion that I'm sharing right now. However, this is an opinion shared by like 90% of my viewers and 90% of the people that are like actively playing this game. It's simply not fun to play water maps without crossing to your opponent. And in my opinion, either they fix water drastically, which in my opinion is a huge project, or this is what I think they should do: remove all water maps from competitive play, all water maps from quick match queue, and only leave them in the campaigns. And if you want to make a custom lobby, you can play the water map as you wish, because really these maps are not fun to play if you don't actually actively look to play a water map. Next up, we got Black Forest, and that's once again going to Alta 4 tier list. Now, once again, this is not exactly an opinion. I do hate Black Forest because of how closed off it is, but objectively speaking, for a closed map, this map, like Black Forest, does it very poorly. It has no incentive to push out on the map. There's no sacred sites. The extra gold mines are nice, but they're not nice enough to really like contest in the mid game. They really just are a late game thing that if you get them, it's all good, and if not, you're just gonna try to like push into your opponent with like heavy siege in late game anyways. Also, the water in the background and like the back of your base literally makes it so early game aggression is impossible. Black Forest is the worst map at what it tries to do, which is be a closed, boomy type map, because it ends up being a stall fest and not necessarily like a boom and fight. It ends up being like a boom, then stall with a bunch of walls, and then only fight when you're at max pop, max siege. The only thing, which is kind of an exploit that makes this map fun, is using the tree chopping trick to go around stone walls and palisade walls in the early game to actually allow for mid game aggression. But again, I'm not even sure if that's intentional for the game, so I don't think that's even a good thing to point out. Next up is Boulder Bay. This is probably the best land map. I'm going to put it at could use balancing. The only issue I have with this, the best water map, excuse me. The only issue I have with this map is the fact that sometimes you can spawn with literally no fish near your dock. So if they just made that a little bit more balanced, I can see this map being pretty good for what it does. Again, I'm not a huge fan of water maps, so I don't like this one. But as far as the water map goes, this is probably the best option. Next up is Mountain Pass. It's going to go into the could use balancing as well. It's a decent map for what it tries to do, which is make it like a little bit more of a boomy map, but some early game aggression could earn you that wall in the middle, which has a lot of versatility. You can keep your opponent out, you can kind of choke him out, you can wall up that map, wall up the middle, and then go for a push behind it since your opponent cannot scout you. So Mountain Pass is very interesting in that regard, but I think that some of the generations are like pretty unfair, and it spawns like multiple passages that are very obscure, very small, so it's a little bit weird. So Mountain Pass for me could use some balancing, but otherwise it's pretty good. Next up, we've got Niagara. This, in my opinion, could use some balancing. It's not a bad concept having that middle water and then the side waters. And I like that in some cases you have the side waters near you and the side waters far. That adds for a little bit more flavor to the map, a little bit more diversity, and I'm a huge fan of it. The problem is for me is the amount of wolves that you have between your initial area and then like the middle are super random, and you can have a lot of wolves or no wolves at all, and that makes it super RNG. Like if you go out without the scouts, you could lose your villages to like 1 or 2 wolves, or it can slow you down a lot, and I personally hate that. Also, the map is just a little bit janky with how big the mountains are. I'm not a huge fan of those big mountains in this map and in this game in general. And I don't know, something about Niagara just feels a little bit off in terms of like how the map spawns, especially in the middle of the water. Next up is Warring Islands, and this is going to go straight into the Alta 4 tier. Same explanation as Archipelago. Remove water maps, they suck. Confluence. This map is terrible. For me, it's an Alta 4 for sure. This is a little bit more opinion based because Confluence is one of those maps, in my opinion, that doesn't do the early game water properly. You can easily wall off the sides because they're very close to you, and it all becomes about early game water, but that's not exciting because the river is so narrow. So it's like you can only fit 1 or 2 ships, and if you could just block that off with maybe a tower or a Barbican of the Sun, that like the water just dies. So then it just becomes a booming map. And in my opinion, it just doesn't encourage early game aggression enough, and it doesn't do enough to force the players to fight. The Nubia River is a map that probably could use some balancing. I like some concepts of the map, like how the river can loop around. You can sneak docks on your opponent's side. That's pretty cool. It adds like for fun. It adds for fun different games. However, I don't like that the side is very wallable, like the left-hand side. And I also don't like how easy it is to wall the crossing to completely take away water gameplay. So I think the Nubia River is not bad, but I think you should not allow them to wall the crossing, or just make it so that there's less opportunity to wall on this map in general. And I think you have yourselves a very good map. Next up is Dry Arabia, perfectly balanced. Open land maps are consistently the best maps in the game. Simply, a lot of stuff's going to work, a lot of different strategies can work. Once the game gets balanced, open land maps will be featuring a variety of different civs and a variety of different strategies, that are all very fun and enjoyable to watch. French Pass, it's a closed map. It's not bad. I'm going to put it at could use balancing. In my opinion, if they just make the mountains either thinner or shorter, I think more like shorter mountains would be better. Make the sides much bigger so that walling the sides isn't as possible, because encouraging people to fight is actually much more interesting from a map design than encouraging people to wall. I do like the fact that trading is possible on this map, although a little bit risky. I do like the fact that sacred sets in the middle are pretty good, so it encourages map control. A lot of gold in the middle encourages map control. So French Pass does what it does well, but it could use some changes to make it for a little bit more exciting. And lastly is Hive. Hive is fantastic. I'm going to go into the acceptable category for Hive actually. A lot of the maps in Hive are a little bit weird. It has a ton of stealth force inside, which I think is fun. It's a fun mechanic. It's a good mechanic. But it does make it so less civilizations are viable. So I would say it's a great map, but it's definitely not as perfectly balanced as these three at the top. However, it's one of my personal favorites, and I definitely play it every time. That's going to be it for my AOE4 map tier list, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys agree with me at all, let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys disagree, also be sure to let me know. I personally think that the game is very good on open land maps, but very, very, very bad on some of these worse maps, and simply not enjoyable. If they get a queue where we can pick our maps, I feel like I'd have a lot more fun playing on a day-to-day. But as it currently stands, I feel like I'm having fun in like maybe half my games, maybe even less, depending on how much I out to 4. And that simply is just not a good ratio for a competitive player. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.